A shiver runs down your spine. You can see it. You can smell it. You can hear it. As the initial rush of feeling fades, you realize you're experiencing a powerful bout of nostalgia. Something, maybe a smell, maybe a shape, or even a sound, has triggered your mind to remember a time when you felt happy, when the world seemed brighter, and generally just better. As we barrel toward the middle of the 2020s, the world seems to be ever more obsessed with the past with each passing year. Why do so many people long for the things they enjoyed as children? Why does nostalgia seem to be becoming a more important aspect of our lives? And is that a bad thing? In this video, we'll first explore what precisely nostalgia is and why we sometimes get this feeling. Then we'll move on to precisely why modern society seems to be so obsessed with the past. And in the third section of this video, we'll look into the good, the bad, and the ugly of nostalgia. Then, as always, in the conclusion of this video, we'll look into how we can all make the present better so we don't have to pine for an imagined past. Really quickly, before I move on into the meat of this video, I feel like it's important to point out that as someone born in 1980, I consider myself part of the Xennial generation. I aim to explore concepts through this channel from our unique perspective, since Xennials are the only generation raised both analog and digital. My videos showcase my philosophical understanding of a subject, supplemented with verifiable facts and information to support my beliefs. If you disagree or have something to add, I welcome your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. As always, there are chapters in the description that will let you skip to any section you want. Thanks for checking out my creation, and if you're new at the Xennial Philosopher, I hope you'll subscribe and return soon to continue to expand your perception and grow your mind alongside me. Now, let's explore what exactly nostalgia is in the first part of this video. Part 1. What is nostalgia? Nostalgia, just the word, almost certainly brings up emotions that you associate with a more idyllic past. But that's not the definition, so let's look at how Merriam-Webster's defines the term. Nostalgia, which is a noun, is defined as a wistful or excessively sentimental yearning for a return to some past period or irrecoverable condition. Or, even more simply, Webster defines nostalgia as the state of being homesick or just homesickness. Those definitions, I think, sum up the phenomenon pretty well, but nostalgia is not something that everyone experiences. It might seem like a universal phenomenon that all people experience, but the truth of the matter is, you have to have lived a privileged childhood or past in general to even have the advantage of escaping the lonely present for a better past. Regardless, most of you, at least according to YouTube statistics, are from America, which means you probably fondly remember your childhood or teenage years, so you'll know what this feeling is. And many of us relish the times when nostalgia hits us. In fact, so many people are seeking out this nostalgic feeling that much of our modern media is designed to trigger nostalgic feelings. Just in the last year, we saw the Mario movie, more Marvel content, more Star Wars content, and U2 doing a show at the Las Vegas Sphere, among countless other throwbacks. Why it is that we love the past so much is precisely what we'll look at in the next section. Part 2. Why we love old stuff. With nostalgia being shoved down our throats at every possible avenue we can imagine, like movies, television, music, and anything else that can be shown to us, it's obvious that people in the 2020s are obsessed with the past. But what I wonder, and assume most of you do too, is why? Why is such a large portion of our modern art remakes, adaptations, and the use of classic intellectual property? Why are we, as a culture, so obsessed with the past and the nostalgic feelings it stirs in us? Fortunately, we are not the only ones who are curious about this phenomenon of rehashing the past in what seems like an infinite loop of the same stuff. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology asked people to describe the specific circumstances that they experienced to become nostalgic. The researchers found that overwhelmingly the most common triggers of nostalgia were negative emotions, particularly loneliness. Now, the modern loneliness epidemic is a big subject, and I covered some of it in my video called Social Media Makes You Lonely, and I recommend checking that out. It's linked down below for a more in-depth look into why loneliness is such a problem today. The short of it is that as the world has become more digital and digitally connected, the in-person communities our society was built upon have begun falling apart, leaving everyone, no matter how many followers they have online, feeling lonely and separate from everyone and everything. Because such large portions of the currently living human population are experiencing loneliness, and because most of the news we see today is sensational and scary, we as a whole find it much more satisfying and safer to abide in the past. We prefer to remember a time when things were safer, when life was better, and when we were generally happier. While the study I mentioned earlier did find that nostalgia does help people quell their feelings of loneliness and anxiety, there are some negatives to trying to spend all our time living in a remembered and storied past. In this next section, we'll look at nostalgia's good, bad, and ugly. Part 3: Nostalgia's good, bad, and ugly. At this point, we've looked at what nostalgia is as defined and discussed what we feel from the phenomenon. Then, in the last section, we explored why we, as a culture, are so obsessed with nostalgia and the past. But now, let's briefly examine why nostalgia isn't always good. You see, scientists have looked deeply into the effects of nostalgia on the human psyche and have even documented benefits to the feelings. In a peer-reviewed paper from the Association for Psychological Science, the authors argue that nostalgia shouldn't be viewed as a negative experience, let alone be considered a disease or a disorder. They argue that, quote, nostalgia is a predominantly positive, self-reliant, and social emotion serving key psychological functions. They go on to say, nostalgia generates a positive effect, increases self-esteem, fosters social connectedness, and alleviates the existential threat many feel. Now, that paper was published in 2008, and while they weren't exactly wrong, there are some strong positive benefits to the experience of nostalgia, but it doesn't take an Einstein-level genius to know that no one can or should spend all of their time dwelling in the past. It will quickly become unhealthy and antisocial. Now, before you start turning on those old movies and daydreaming about that idyllic past, you need to remember there are some decidedly negative aspects to the phenomenon of nostalgia. For starters, nostalgia is your memory of a time, not an accurate representation of that time. Partly, this is because our memories are unreliable. Now, that would take a whole video to explain, and I already did that. In this video that's linked below. But the simple explanation is that we remember things from our personal perspective, letting us feel like the protagonist when we experience nostalgia. But what we often forget to consider is that while that memory might be comforting to you, not everyone has that privilege. You see, privilege is the key ingredient to enjoying the experience of nostalgia. You cannot have fond memories of a time in your past if there are no pleasant memories of that time. That means people who were abused or live a life of hardship don't have the same escape as others do. This is one of the reasons that nostalgia, while fun, isn't a fix for the problems of the world. Believe it or not, nostalgia is not universal. But it is not just the disparity that makes nostalgia dangerous. It is not just the dreamy act of living in the past. What makes nostalgia dangerous is that it is antithetical to hope. You see, after that 2008 study claimed nostalgia could help people feel less lonely, another group of scientists set out to check their conclusions. During the COVID lockdowns in 2020, this group studied the effects of 3 positive psychological interventions to improve the well-being of their test subjects. Split into 3 groups, the subjects were given support to do one of the following: nostalgia, or looking at a happy past; gratitude, or accepting and loving the present; and hope, or a future in which one is their best possible self. The study found that while nostalgia and gratitude helped, nothing had the long-term effect of hope. And that is what we'll talk about in the conclusion. How we hope is the best chance for us to love our lives now and make the future better. Conclusion: hope is better than nostalgia. I did my best to make this a shorter video, so I sincerely hope more of you are here to watch the conclusion. If you prefer these shorter videos, please let me know down in the comments. In the last few parts of this video, we learned what nostalgia is, how it's defined, and what it feels like. Then we looked at precisely why our culture is so obsessed with the past in the 2020s. Then in the last section, we looked at the psychological advantages that nostalgia can provide, as well as the privilege that the phenomenon is altogether. But now we need to talk about how living in the past is not the answer, and how it can only eventually lead to more depression and loneliness. We live in a culture that spends an inordinate amount of time and energy living in and rehashing the past. But if you've ever wondered why you still feel unfulfilled after that nostalgia-packed movie or TV show is over, then you need to hear about hope. You see, nostalgia is a pining for the past, for something that already happened. In most cases, the memories we are basing this idyllic feeling on are inaccurate or outright false. See my memory videos to learn more about that. But we can do something that is at least equally effective in the short term and far more effective in the long term: thinking about the future. You see, all you need to do is imagine a future in which you are your best possible self. Then, think about it. Obsess over that imagined best possible future. The longer you dwell on this, the longer you will find you can maintain an even temper and face the day, the future, and other people much better than you ever could by dwelling in the past. To learn more about these techniques, check out the study in the last link in the description. And finally, let me know in the comments how you cope with such an uncertain world. What did you think about these concepts? Do you plan to learn more from the resources below? Check out the references and links to related videos and articles in the description to learn more about the topics of this video. If you still need to subscribe to the channel, remember, so that you'll get all the new videos to expand your mind and grow your perception.